The story begins deep in the forests of rural Missouri, where a man named Eric Harson is spending the night with his mistress, Thalia. The two of them are staying in a quiet house far from anyone else. After they finish their intimate moment, Eric heads to the bathroom to take a shower. Meanwhile, Thalia walks over to close the front door, which strangely had been left open. After that, she turns on some music through the television and tries to relax. But not long after, she starts feeling uneasy. There is a strange sensation that someone might be watching her from somewhere nearby. A few minutes later, Eric finishes his shower and walks back into the bedroom. What he sees completely shocks him. Thalia is lying on the floor covered in blood. On the mirror nearby, someone has written a chilling message using blood that reads, "You're next." And that chilling warning is only the beginning. This is "You're next." Before Eric can even process what is happening, a mysterious figure wearing a sheep mask suddenly appears and brutally kills him. The next morning, a wealthy couple named Audrey and Paul arrive in the area after recently purchasing an old countryside house. They plan to host a family gathering there to celebrate their 35th wedding anniversary. Coincidentally, the house they bought is located not far from Eric's place. As they drive past Eric's home, the couple casually talk about the scandal involving Eric and Thalia's affair. Eventually, they arrive at the old house they just bought. But the moment they get there, Audrey immediately feels something is off because the front door is already open. Paul assumes it is probably nothing serious and suggests that the caretaker may have simply forgotten to lock the door after finishing some cleaning work. While Audrey begins tidying up the dining room, she suddenly hears loud thumping noises coming from upstairs. What makes it even stranger is that Paul had just come up from the basement moments earlier. The unexpected noise immediately makes Audrey nervous, and she suggests they should just leave the house for now. Paul, however, believes it might only be the sound of old wooden floors creaking in the aging house. To make sure, he decides to check the second floor while holding a walking stick as a precaution. But just as Paul is about to open one of the doors upstairs, someone suddenly surprises him. It turns out to be his son Crispian, who has just arrived along with his girlfriend Erin. Since nothing unusual is found upstairs, Paul concludes that the earlier noise was probably just the old structure of the house making sounds. He reassures Audrey and invites Crispian and Erin to come inside. Later, while Crispian and Erin are relaxing together in a bedroom, Crispian mentions that his father bought this old house with the intention of renovating it into a comfortable retirement home. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Audrey takes her medication while standing near the counter. Outside the window, unseen by her, a mysterious figure wearing a tiger mask quietly watches her from the darkness. The following morning, Crispian's older brother Drake arrives with his wife Kelly. Since the family has not seen each other in quite some time, Crispian happily chats with his brother and their father Paul. At the same time, Audrey asks Erin for a small favor. Since they have run out of milk, she asks Erin to walk over to the neighbor's house, Eric's house, to see if she can borrow some. Before leaving, Erin casually takes a picture of Paul, Drake, and Crispian using the digital camera she always carries with her. When Erin arrives at Eric's house, something feels strange. The only thing she hears is the sound of music from a DVD that is still playing on repeat inside the house. She calls out several times, but no one answers. With no response from anyone, Erin eventually decides to head back to the house. Only then does the scene reveal the horrifying truth. Inside Eric's living room, his lifeless body is sitting motionless on the sofa. Later that night, the rest of Crispian's siblings finally arrive with their partners. Amy shows up with her boyfriend Tariq, while the youngest brother Felix arrives with his girlfriend Z. The house had been empty for years, but now it suddenly feels alive again, with the whole family gathered inside. Everyone seems happy, especially Audrey and Paul, since it has been a long time since their entire family came together like this. Soon the family sits down for dinner, and Paul leads a prayer before they begin eating. At first, the atmosphere feels warm, but it does not stay that way for long. Drake, who has a habit of being arrogant and irritating, starts mocking Tariq for making short films. He also takes shots at Crispian, criticizing him for being an unprofessional college professor because he is dating one of his own students, Erin. Even Kelly seems fed up with Drake's attitude. The tension around the table grows, and the conversation quickly turns into an argument. In the middle of the chaos, Tariq walks toward one of the windows after noticing something strange outside. Suddenly, a bolt flies through the window and hits the family. Panic erupts instantly. Someone outside is attacking the house with a crossbow. Tariq is killed on the spot, and Drake is struck by an arrow in the back while trying to shield his mother. Erin immediately takes control of the situation and tells everyone to get down and stay away from the windows. They quickly realize they cannot call the police because there is no signal on their phones. Felix suggests that the attackers may have installed a signal jammer, something that can easily be bought online. Even while badly injured, Drake still finds the energy to argue and insult Felix. Trying to stabilize the situation, Aaron instructs everyone to move into the next room where it is safer. They crouch low and use chairs as makeshift shields. Drake is then given a sedative to help manage the pain, since removing the arrow could make the injury far worse. Aaron and Paul carefully peek through a small window, but cannot see anyone outside. Since the area looks quiet for the moment, Felix proposes an idea. Someone could run outside and try to get far enough away to find a phone signal and call the police. Otherwise, they will remain trapped in the house with no help coming. As usual, Drake and Crispian start arguing again over something trivial. Eventually, Amy volunteers to make the run herself, believing she can move fast enough to escape. Felix and Paul prepare to open the door, while Amy gets ready to sprint. But the moment the door swings open, Audrey and Kelly begin screaming in horror. Amy collapses instantly. Her neck has been sliced open by a nearly invisible glass wire stretched across the doorway. Realizing how carefully this attack has been planned, Aaron heads upstairs to lock every door and window that might still be open. She also plans to place an SOS sign outside one of the upstairs windows. At the same time, she sends a message to the police, hoping that once even the smallest signal appears, the text might eventually go through. Meanwhile, the sedative begins to work, and Drake no longer feels the pain, even though the arrow is still stuck in his back. Paul brings Audrey upstairs to rest in one of the bedrooms so she can calm down. The couple is completely shaken. What was supposed to be a joyful anniversary celebration has turned into a nightmare. After leaving Audrey to rest, Paul goes back downstairs to help the others. But the moment he is gone, a terrifying figure suddenly crawls out from under the bed. It is a masked attacker wearing a fox mask and holding a machete. At the same time, Aaron is suddenly attacked in the kitchen by another figure wearing a tiger mask who tries to enter through the window. Fortunately, Aaron reacts quickly. She fights back and manages to stab the attacker in the hand, forcing the masked figure to retreat and escape into the darkness. Audrey meets a horrific end when the attacker wearing the fox mask strikes her with a machete. The weapon is left embedded in her head, and on the wall nearby appears the same chilling message written in blood. "You're next," exactly like the scene at Eric Harson's house earlier. When Paul sees what has happened to his wife, he breaks down in tears. Felix and Crispian try to calm him down as the shock sinks in. After covering Audrey's body with a blanket, Kelly bends down to look under the bed, only to discover the fox-masked attacker still hiding there. Terrified, she immediately runs out of the house, carefully ducking under the glass wire stretched across the doorway. Drake rushes after his wife, also lowering his body to avoid the trap. Unfortunately, the arrow still lodged in his back catches on something as he moves. Desperate, Drake pulls the arrow out himself, but the pain is too much. He collapses and loses consciousness. Kelly manages to make it outside, but she is not safe yet. The masked killer wearing the sheep mask is already watching her from the shadows, holding a crossbow. Back at the house, Crispian sees that Kelly has escaped and decides to run to the car and bring it closer to the house. He reassures Aaron that he will be fine and asks her to stay behind to help Felix and Z move Drake and their father to safety. Just in case something happens, Aaron hands Crispian a large kitchen knife before he leaves. Meanwhile, Kelly keeps running until she eventually reaches Eric's house. She rushes inside hoping to find help, but the moment she sees Eric's lifeless body, she breaks down in panic. Before she can escape, the sheep-masked killer appears and finishes her off. Kelly is now dead. Not long after, Crispian reaches the car. From his point of view, the outside area seems quiet enough, so he heads back to the house and announces that he will go to Eric's place to look for help. If he is lucky, he might find a phone signal there and contact the police. Before leaving again, Crispian cuts the glass wire trap at the front door so no one else accidentally runs into it. Aaron, however, is convinced that at least one of the attackers is still hiding somewhere inside the house. Together with Felix and Z, she helps carry the unconscious Drake onto the balcony so he will be hidden from anyone outside. After that, Aaron goes to the kitchen and gathers several tools that could be used as weapons. Suddenly, the tiger-masked attacker crashes through the window, throwing Kelly's dead body inside the room. Without hesitation, Aaron grabs a meat tenderizer and repeatedly smashes the attacker's head over and over until the killer collapses. When they remove the tiger mask, none of them recognize the person underneath. At the same time, Paul becomes determined to find the killer who murdered Audrey, the one wearing the fox mask. While searching the house, he remembers a small room upstairs that he has never opened before. Inside, he finds it filled with various items. This leads him to suspect that the killers may have been hiding in the house long before he and Audrey even arrived. Then suddenly, the electricity in the house goes out. Aaron heads to the basement to look for the fuse box, while Felix and Z go upstairs to check on Paul. It turns out the fuse box is actually on the second floor. As soon as Paul restores the power, the Fox masked killer suddenly appears and kills him on the spot. But what happens next reveals something far more disturbing. Felix and Z remain strangely calm. It becomes clear that the youngest son, Felix, along with his girlfriend Z, had secretly hired the masked killers to murder his entire family. Their plan was simple. Once everyone else was dead, Felix would inherit the enormous fortune left by his parents. Meanwhile, the attacker wearing the sheep mask becomes furious after seeing the tiger mask killer lying dead on the floor. The two of them were actually siblings. His angry screams echo through the house and reach Erin, who is still hiding in the basement. Erin moves carefully, knowing the killer is standing just outside the door. She quietly pulls a screwdriver from her pocket and slowly looks through the keyhole. Instead of staying hidden, their eyes suddenly meet through the small opening. Realizing he has been spotted, the sheep-masked attacker begins smashing the door with an axe. At that same moment, Drake starts to regain consciousness. Erin realizes she has no time to wait. She suddenly attacks and manages to stab the masked killer with the screwdriver, forcing him to retreat and run away. Not long after, Felix and Z come downstairs and claim that Paul is fine and simply resting upstairs. Z then tries to calm the situation by suggesting that the attackers may have already fled after being scared off by Erin. But Erin is not convinced. She strongly believes that at least two of the killers are still somewhere around the house. She leads Drake, Felix, and Z into the basement to gather anything they can use as weapons. Afterward, Erin heads upstairs with Z to set up a trap made from wooden boards covered with nails. The trap is placed near one of the windows. While they work, Z grows curious and asks how Erin knows so much about survival and defense tactics. Erin explains that since childhood, her father trained her to survive difficult situations. He believed that one day resources might run out, and he wanted his children to be able to protect themselves. But while Erin is busy setting up the trap, Z secretly prepares to kill her using the same trap. At the same time, back in the basement, Drake is devastated after Felix tells him that Kelly has been killed. Without hesitation, Felix suddenly turns on his own brother and stabs Drake repeatedly in the stomach. Upstairs, just as Z prepares to kill Erin, Erin suddenly turns around and unintentionally interrupts the attack, forcing Z to stop. A moment later, Erin decides to check on Paul upstairs. When she enters the room, she is horrified to find Paul already dead. Before another attacker can reach her, Erin escapes by jumping out of the bedroom window. She manages to get away from the sheep-masked killer, but the fall leaves a shard of glass stuck deep in her left knee. Knowing she needs to move freely, Erin pulls the glass out despite the pain. Not long after, the sheep-masked killer finds her again and tries to shoot her with the crossbow. Erin moves quickly and rushes back into the house, tying a piece of cloth around her leg to slow the bleeding. As the masked killer enters the house in pursuit, he steps directly onto the nail trap Erin set earlier. Meanwhile, inside Audrey's bedroom, Felix orders the fox-masked killer to check on the sheep-masked attacker who is screaming in pain. At the same time, Felix and Z start arguing. Z behaves disturbingly casual, even trying to flirt with Felix beside Audrey's dead body. She even takes Audrey's ring for herself. Felix then vents his frustration at the hired killers, complaining that they allowed someone like Erin to outsmart them. He even admits that he personally killed Drake himself, despite already paying the killers $200,000 for the job. Hearing this confession makes the sheep-masked killer furious. After learning that his brother, the tiger-masked attacker, has been killed, he wants to take revenge on Felix. Felix quickly tries to calm him down by promising to pay double the amount, plus a bonus once the entire plan succeeds and he inherits his parents' fortune. Unfortunately for them, Erin hears every word of this conversation while hiding quietly behind a curtain. But just as she listens, her phone suddenly makes a sound. The text message she sent earlier has finally gone through to the police. The noise alerts everyone. The fox-masked killer slowly approaches the curtain where Erin is hiding. Thinking fast, Erin slips out through a door and quietly circles back into the house through a window. Felix, Z, and the fox-masked killer rush outside to chase her, leaving the injured sheep-masked killer behind. Moments later, Erin suddenly reappears and strikes the sheep-masked attacker with a brutal blow. With that single move, Felix's entire plan begins to collapse, all because of one determined woman. Next, Erin prepares another trap at the front door. She rigs an axe above the entrance so that anyone who opens the door will be struck immediately. After searching outside and failing to find her, the last remaining hired killer, the one wearing the fox mask, decides to go back inside the house to look for her. Before doing so, He hands his crossbow to Felix so Felix can protect himself. As soon as Erin notices the fox-masked killer climbing through a window, she quickly runs to the basement. There she grabs a wooden plank and smashes all the light bulbs, leaving the entire area in darkness. Then she sets up the digital camera she always carries, programming it to take photos repeatedly, with the flash going off again and again. The flashes briefly light up the dark basement, allowing Erin to track the masked killer's movement. The moment the fox-masked attacker steps inside, Erin does not hesitate. She strikes and kills him. Even with her injured leg slowing her down, Erin continues fighting with incredible determination and clever tactics. At one point, Felix fires the crossbow through a window trying to shoot her, but Erin manages to dodge the bolt. Soon after, Z enters the house carrying the crossbow, while Felix retrieves a small knife from the car outside. When Z reaches the kitchen, Erin suddenly attacks her. Moments later, Felix arrives as well. The confrontation quickly turns violent, and in the end, Erin manages to brutally kill both of them. After everything that has happened, she becomes the only person left alive in the house. However, there is still one person whose fate remains uncertain: Crispian. A short time later, Erin answers a call on Felix's phone. The caller turns out to be Crispian himself. Not knowing that Felix is already dead, he asks if everything has finally settled down. He also apologizes for not helping earlier, explaining that he ran away because he did not want to witness his own family dying. Hearing this, Erin stands there in silence as tears begin to fall. The man she loved and trusted has been part of the entire plot all along, working with Felix and Z to steal their parents' fortune. When Crispian receives no response, he climbs back into the house through a window. He is shocked to discover that Erin is the one holding the phone. His surprise grows even more when Erin reveals that every masked killer, along with Felix and Z, has already been killed by her alone. Crispian quickly begins trying to justify everything. According to him, the plan was carefully designed from the start. Erin was never meant to die. Instead, she was supposed to survive and become a witness in court. Her testimony would make it appear that all the violence in the house, including the earlier murder of Eric, was the work of a random, cold-blooded killer. With the rest of the family gone, Crispian would inherit the entire fortune left by his parents, worth millions of dollars. His plan was to use that money to live happily with Erin, but hearing those excuses only turns Erin's grief into uncontrollable anger. She had come to meet her boyfriend's family, hoping their relationship would become something serious. Instead, the family gathering turned into a horrifying tragedy fueled by greed. In the end, Erin kills Crispian. Not long after Crispian dies, a police officer finally arrives at the house. Seeing movement inside, the officer fires his weapon and hits Erin in the shoulder, knocking her to the ground. When the officer notices the bodies scattered around the house, he quickly returns to his patrol car and calls for backup to come to the scene. Meanwhile, Erin, badly wounded, struggles to crawl toward the front door. She tries desperately to warn the officer not to open it because the axe trap is still set. But unfortunately, the officer opens the door anyway. So the moral of the story is, if your rich boyfriend invites you to a family dinner in a creepy forest house, maybe bring trust issues and a survival kit.